Video 3 for APUSH. So anyway, all these different cartoons kind of demonstrate a very positive response to FDR in the programs. Here you see FDR Christmas with Uncle Sam, hoping to get something from all these programs in his stockings, right? Makes sense? Everybody's good? Awesome. All right. Now we have second New Deal. So after 2 years of success with the first New Deal, and after Democrats did what in 34, won more seats in Congress and got more people involved with FDR, he saw this as a mandate to do what? Keep doing more, right? Do more programs. So in the second half of his first term, so 1935-36, you're going to see FDR pass the second wave of New Deal programs. Now, understand the time. People at the time didn't call it first, second New Deal. That's a historian thing. But we kind of categorize it based on why and when it comes out and what they address. All right, so anyway. So after the Democrats get victory in the midterms in 34, FDR sees this as a mandate to do another round of programs to help the country out. Keeping in mind this entire time, what are we doing with the government? What's happening with the government? It's getting bigger, getting more involved. It's also, to make all these programs and jobs happen, it's doing what? Spending more money. Thus, doing what kind of spending? Deficit. And that's a phrase you want to write down. The government under the New Deal is doing more and more deficit spending. The idea that you have to make all these programs work first, and when you get the economy back going again, then you can kind of pull back on the spending. But in the meantime, we need to do deficit spending to get everybody back on their feet. So in the summer of 35, after the midterm elections, FDR launches the second wave of programs. The first we're going to look at is the WPA. The only big job program I'm going to make you know is WPA because it does so many things. So the only one you get tested on ever is WPA, which is the Works Progress Administration. This is the most well-known 1930s New Deal project. This is the largest job program made by the New Deal. WPA was the largest job program made by the New Deal. Over time, not all at once, but over time, it hired 8 million workers and spent $11 billion. So it hired 8 million workers and spent over $11 billion over several years. But by far, it's the most famous group to come out of all this. So it's the biggest, largest program. So it's going to do a lot of the same stuff other programs did. It'll do a lot of roads and bridges and airports and public buildings and dams, all that kind of stuff. But what's unique about the WPA, besides it being the largest program and spending the most money on these jobs, it also hires a lot of unique people. Groups that often go overlooked in times of need. So they also have like an artist project within the WPA. They have a theater project for people who do like plays and stuff. They also have a writer's project. So they have an art program, or art project as they call it. The art project, the theater project, and the writer's project embedded within the WPA. Where those types of people get work too. So for a theater project, it does exactly what it sounds like. The government's paying people to do what? Put on shows, put on entertainment, right? For the art, make art, do murals. One of the most famous things that the WPA produces are these art murals in public buildings. So federal and state buildings have a ton of these murals painted in them back in this time period because they were hired to do so. If you've ever been like to the new state capitol, you see some of these images like in that building. Some of the LSU buildings that are around since the 30s, they have it too. So all these old murals, a lot of times you see they kind of focus on what? Working people, right? Farmers, industrial workers, a little communist-esque bit. But they do a lot of these murals to hire people to have jobs during this time period. And a lot of those murals still exist even now into 2020, excuse me. But also like performers, like you would have possibly like dancers as well too, but artists, dancers, all hired on the art project. Then you have the writer's project. Writers are hired to go around to cities and develop like city guides or state guides. So writers go around and develop city guides or state guides where they write about the histories of areas and about the geography and things to do in areas. So you have these writer projects, people going around and writing about the country. The most famous thing the Writers Project does is that it goes out and gets slave narratives. So the most famous thing that the WPA Writers Project does is go out and obtain slave narratives. Meaning that they go find ex-slaves and write down their stories. But this is 1935. How old would an ex-slave be by this point?
Like ancient. And they would have been like 20 whenever they were enslaved.
Well, you'd be a slave if you were born into slavery. So how old at least?
80.
About 75, 80 years old, right? They're fairly old. So it might be stuff they tell you. The point I'm trying to make here is that while it's a good resource, it may not be 100% reliable. Because number one, they're old. Number two, if they were alive when slavery existed, they probably were fairly what at the time? So anything they learn about slavery or about their way of life may have come more from parents and stuff. So it's a good resource, but you have to take it kind of with a grain of salt. Because it's an older, these are older people, and you may not know exactly what they all remember exactly, but that's one of the more famous things they do is they collect a lot of these slave narratives at the time. About 2,300 first-person accounts. 2,300 first-person accounts were made. So the WPA hires all kinds of people, writers, actors, artists, as well as the normal construction workers, right? The road builders and the bridge builders, all those guys too. Then you have the Resettlement Administration, the RA. The Resettlement Administration. This provided loans to sharecroppers and tenant farmers. So they could stop being renters. So this provides loans to sharecroppers and tenant farmers to get them out of being sharecroppers, to get them out of being tenant farmers or renters of land. So it provided loans to sharecroppers and tenant farmers in a hope to get them out of these situations. Also, it provided money for migrant workers, people who left their homes to look for work. It established migrant camps for people to go stay in with better housing. So it helped to kind of establish better migrant worker communities. All right, the next one I have that's underlined is the Wagner Act. So on a test, you should only ever really see Wagner Act, but its official name is the National Labor Relations Act. So the Wagner Act, as it's more commonly called, is officially called the National Labor Relations Act. And I know you're thinking, do I have to know all these programs? Like I said, it's only what? The underlined ones. But be aware, this is how much stuff FDR is getting done in his time and all. This is all in one term, right? This is all one term of office. This is how big the New Deal was. Which is what we try to, I think this is why the test and EOC, and we try to kind of simplify it by making the main ones, the big ones, like Wagner Act. The Wagner Act overall was made to help replace the NRA. So the NRA that went away, because it was declared unconstitutional, this helps replace it. The Wagner Act helps replace it. So it's geared to help out who? Since it's replacing NRA, it's geared to help out what people? Workers, right? So the job of the job of the Wagner Act was to help out workers. This guaranteed a worker's right to join a union and a union's right to collectively bargain. This guaranteed a worker's right to join a union and the union's right to collectively bargain. So this guarantees a worker's right to join a union and a union's right to collectively bargain. So finally, after all these decades, you finally have it acted as what? And unions. The Wagner Act still exists today. So legally, by law, unions have a legal right to exist and collectively bargain with their boss because of this act. It also outlawed other unfair business practices that were unfair to labor. So it also outlawed other unfair business practices that were unfair to labor. So it also outlawed other unfair business practices that were unfair to labor. What it establishes, and it still has today, is what's called the National Labor Relations Board. So what it establishes as well then and now is the National Labor Relations Board. basically, if you have a complaint about your employer, or if there's something going on with your employer in general and they're abusing you as a worker, then you can do what? File a complaint, and they'll investigate. If you ever go to if you have a job, there's a wall somewhere in your job that has a whole board of stuff, all kinds of information, right? All your rights and all this other stuff listed out. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, a board of like all the workers' rights at the establishment. It's by law they have to post it, right? But all that gets explained. Like all that gets explained in this about minimum wage, about your rights as a worker, what you're protected by, on and on. So like you want to say something.
I was just going to say that I don't think the Fenton swimming pool has my workers' rights posted.
Probably in the clubhouse though.
Maybe.
Yeah. Look, it's on a wall. It doesn't be like a wall everybody can see, but it's somewhere in there probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Go look for it.
Yeah. Go look for it. If not,
Easter egg.
file a complaint.
They don't want you to see it. Find it
Exactly.
anyway.
Then you have the Rural Electrification Administration, the REA, the Rural Electrification Administration. This one does exactly what it sounds like it does, which is what? There you go.
Executes everybody in the South.
No. There was still a big portion of Americans that would no electricity. I think the percentage was like 40%. Something like 40% of Americans still didn't have electricity. So the next 10 years, this works to like make it 100%. So the next 10 years, this works to make those areas have 100% electricity. Yes.
Did you know that Demco, its co-op, was created as part of the REA?
I did not do that.
And then the REA became the RUS, which is the Rural Utility Service.
Nice.
I only know that because I'm going to look at Demco.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, so that's it. There you go. Real life connections.
Are there
Exactly,
still
yes.
people who don't have electricity in the United States?
Yes, the Amish.
I'm sure, yeah.
Well, other than that,
But I'm saying I don't think it's a point anymore where you can't get it. I think like nowadays, like if you want it, you can get it. Like back then, you couldn't get it in every area. Now you basically could. I think. So anyway, federal taxes. In 1935, income taxes of the wealthy were increased. So he does increase income taxes for the wealthy. So FDR's New Deal program does increase income taxes for the wealthy. They also increase taxes on large gifts and capital gains. Capital gains tax is like the taxes you get off of like, it's the gains you make off of like stocks and bonds and stuff. So like the money you make off stocks, they can tax a lot of that. That's the gains you make off of it, right? Hence the name capital gains. So basically, he passes higher income tax to target what kind of people? The rich, the super wealthy, right?
Wait, it said that there were going to be taxes put on like larger gifts.
Yes, because that's a write-off a lot of times. Like I think nowadays, a lot of times it can be a write-off. But like basically, if you give a large gift to somebody, they might tax that. Yeah, that happens. All right, we're going to stop the third video there.